This is the Garden of English. I'm Tim Freitas, and if you're sick of writing garbage conclusions for the argument prompt, you're going to want to stay tuned for this because we're going to work on how to actually get past writing only summaries. So, stay tuned. Okay, this is going to be our last video in our argument series here. If you've missed any of the other videos, you're going to want to just click on those right up here so that you can see how we break down the prompt, how we plan out our essay, how we write thesis statements, how we write body paragraphs, things like that. So check those out. You also probably want to click like and subscribe right now because we're going to start a synthesis series later on next week that will help bring us through the entire synthesis paper as well. Luckily with synthesis, it's just a varied form of argument. So a lot of it will be, hey, skills that you've already looked into and just have to apply in a little bit of a different manner, okay? But what we'll do here is we're going to just adjust the screen, and I'm going to remind you that we are talking about a prompt here that has us argue our position on the use of warning labels and warning messages to signal potentially troubling content. Okay, so that's what we've been arguing this whole time. It's the same prompt. It hasn't changed at all. This document, once again, will always be in the description down below, and so you have access to that. Now, before I get into the actual conclusion steps that we're going to look at here for today, I'd like to just point out that there is a little color key. People had been asking about that from my last videos. Why did I have things colored the way they were? Even though I explained that in the videos, here's the color code key for the examples that you'll see on the following pages. Anything that's in green refers to where examples are coming from or are examples. Anything in orange is a unifying idea or message. Anything in blue is transitional language, and anything red is actual commentary from me. Okay, but let's actually look right underneath the prompt here for just a minute, because back in the planning video that we did, once again, that can be accessed up in the corner there, in the planning video for the essay, when we broke down the prompt and began thinking about providing our thesis statement and whatnot, there was a set of questions that I made my kids actually answer before they wrote their paper, and that was, what do I want my audience to understand, and what do I want my audience to do? Now, these questions are really important because the understand is going to be what the kids are going to actually, or what students are going to actually argue throughout their paper, but the do is going to be what's going to guide my conclusion here, okay? So we want to actually go back to this initial planning guide and say, okay, what is it that I want my audience to do when I'm done? Because this is what I'm going to write into my conclusion. Okay, so let's start scrolling down here. You'll see the essay here. I did actually add a third topic sentence, by the way, that I think would actually help bring the essay home a little bit more if you want to check that out. Here's my example body paragraph. Then I've got my topic sentences added. But this right here will be our page that is gives us directions on how to generate a conclusion. Now you'll notice that I just put right in here what I want my audience to do. I want my audience to care about and be sensitive to others while still providing individuals a sense or actual freedom of choice. That's what's important here when we think about the warning labels and whatnot, okay? And so now I'm using warning labels to actually argue that freedom of choice and sensitivity can coexist and empathy can coexist. So what do we do to write a conclusion? Well, the first step of writing a conclusion is this. We're going to think about our paper, and we're going to think about all the ideas that our paper kind of explores. And ideas are singular, abstract concepts. And here it says identify 2 or 3, but honestly, if you can identify 5 to 7, it's going to make this conclusion process a little bit easier. But we want ones that are pertinent and precise. We don't want ones where we're like, this idea might fit in with my paper. No. You want to be precise with your ideas, and you need to say, yes, this fits with what I'm talking about, or no, this does not. So what I did here is I chose 5 different ideas. You'll notice that in my paper about these warning labels, I chose choice, innocence, experience, offense, and freedom. Okay? So this is the easy part of the conclusion. You just pick out your ideas and you say, okay, which ideas seem to relate? And this is going to help us create our first sentence of our conclusion. So what do we do now? We go to step 2. What we're going to do is we're going to generate a sentence that establishes a relationship between the ideas that we have up top. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to use all 5 or 7 ideas. It doesn't mean that you're going to use only 3 of the ideas. We're going to just say take some of the ideas, maybe all of them, maybe just a couple, and create a sentence that suggests their relationship, especially as seen in the paper that you've just written. So notice that we're not producing a summary here, but we are collecting the ideas that this paper explores and we're establishing a clear relationship between them. So you'll notice here too, though, that in the directions it says stylized, consider generating a pertinent metaphor. And what this means here is this: you can either create a general statement about how these ideas relate, or you can try to create a stylized statement, which is, I'm going to try to develop a metaphor that will be pertinent to my paper, okay? This is very similar to what I encourage kids to do in the rhetorical analysis conclusion, and you can actually check out that video up here as well. Now, look at my first sentence here. My first sentence in a traditional sense is this: in order to experience true freedom, an individual must be able to make an informed choice. And you'll notice what I did in here. I have the word experience in here, I've got the word freedom in here, and I've got choice in here. So you'll notice that I did get 3 of my ideas in that first sentence. And this right here is a great first sentence. Notice that I did not say in conclusion. Notice that I did not say in summary. And the reason why is because that's considered an immature writing technique. We don't need that type of a transition here, especially because this sentence is so loaded with conclusionary ideas. It's pretty indicative that we're going to be done here pretty soon. Also, the reader will be able to notice he or she is on the last paragraph, so that's good. Now, what I also did here, though, was I did actually include a stylized first sentence, okay, which is I just created a pertinent metaphor because I want to talk about freedom of choice, and being sensitive and whatnot. What I decided to do was I decided to create a metaphor that had to do with being chained, being shackled, as it says in here. So my stylized first sentence would look like this: no truly free individual deserves to be shackled by ignorance, okay? And sure enough, right here, notice that I brought in a new idea, which would be ignorance, okay? And that's okay, you can do that. And once again, neither one of these is necessarily better than the other, but a stylized conclusion does indeed appear to be a bit more sophisticated if it's done well. And a metaphor is a very easy way and strong way to do that. So step 1, you identify your ideas. Step 2, you establish the relationship between that idea in a singular sentence. If you can stylize it with a pertinent metaphor, then by all means feel free to do so, but you don't have to. Step 3 is the hard part here, but what it is, I should say, this right here is what I call channeling one's inner Cinderella. So every one of my students has an inner Cinderella, and the point of a conclusion is to leave a glass slipper, and that is to make your reader, who happens to be your Prince Charming, want to get to the end of your paper and then be like, wow, I want to chase this kid down around the country so I could talk to him or her more. Now you might say that's really creepy. Yes, of course, but this is a metaphor, right? We want something to be so well done that the last idea is just enough where that person is like, I need to talk to this person more. Yes. So channel that inner Cinderella, and we want to leave that glass slipper for your Prince Charming, who happens to be your reader of your AP exam, or your teacher, or of whoever your audience is. We want that audience like begging for more after this. Now, how do we do that? What we're going to do is we are going to take these universal ideas that we looked at, and now we're going to actually turn it into a call to action or a moment of consideration. But what we're not going to do, and what we'll never do, is we will never do it by asking a rhetorical question. That's completely unacceptable, okay? That is an immature writing technique. Typically, people ask rhetorical questions when they don't know how to provide the right amount of commentary in something. So we do not want a rhetorical question. If you're going to finish with a rhetorical question, turn it into a statement. It'll be much more powerful. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to say, okay, we have this statement about ideas. How do we now turn this into a universal model in getting people to do what we want when we made our first statement here? What do we want people to do? I want people to care about others. I want them to be sensitive to others, but I want them to also have a freedom of choice, okay? And so because of that here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this into a model to get people to really think about this, okay? So my first sentence, once again, was, in order to experience true freedom, an individual must be able to make an informed choice. Okay, now I'm going to put this into a universal model that we need to care about other people, but still give them their freedom. And I want people to think about that. So here we go. Warning messages may be, ironically enough, labeled and judged as another way that contemporary society has continued to coddle and stifle individual growth. Now, I want to just highlight something here where it says contemporary society and individual, okay? Because notice the universal terms I'm talking about here. I'm not using the word you. I'm not using specific people. We're keeping it nice and universal. However, such labels actually have a way of motivating community members, nice and broad again, community members, to embrace their personal liberties, especially in relation to their own lives and convictions. The real problem with providing these types of warnings arises when society at large, nice and universal again here, don't forget, when society at large no longer cares to grant such opportunities, even for the sake of teaching others to tolerate offense, since an individual is then actually being oppressed by a social mentality that rejects empathy while parading under the guise of patriotic ideals. Wow. Look at, you get to the bottom of this conclusion and it's like, whoa, that is a pretty intense insight. Because what am I suggesting here at the very end of this, right? That we're actually oppressing people if we don't give them the choice with these warning labels, as opposed to actually producing a more free society. And what we're doing is by saying, oh, we don't need those labels because we need to have a free society, because we need to tolerate offense, what I'm suggesting is that's fake. That's a disguise, right? So we disguise this patriotic ideal as just another way to make it so that we don't have to actually be empathetic towards one another. That is a sophisticated conclusion, and it's nice and universal here, okay? And what I've included down here is the full conclusion with the first sentence tied to it, okay? And then if you continue to scroll down, you'll notice that I actually have the full conclusion on the end here. So this is what the entire paper would look like as a whole, besides the fact I didn't write body paragraph 2 and body paragraph 3, because I used body paragraph 1 as my example. So that's how you do it, folks, when it comes to actually providing conclusions here. You want to make sure that they're nice and universal. You want to make sure that you have that type of language that's going to be universal in nature, that's not the word you, okay? And try to stylize it. A lot of times when I give my kids that opportunity, or my students that opportunity, they really produce something quite excellent. If this video was helpful, I'm going to ask that you just click like and subscribe like I always do. We are also active on social media. You can access our Facebook page and follow and like us there. You can also follow us on Instagram to kind of catch up, stay caught up with what's going on. And I hope to see you all as we start looking into intro paragraphs and conclusions and synthesis and whatnot over the next few weeks. So you all have a great one.